Hi. Vegans. There are three distinct kinds of vegan, as far as I can tell. There's environmental, dietary, and political, otherwise known as good, neutral, or evil. I 100% support environmental veganism, people whose only goal is to reduce their own ecological footprint. It is a noble discipline, and I admire you for it, unless you have children. Eat less meat is a good rule of thumb, and if you can go full veg, then power to you. But you do need to bear in mind a little vitamin called B12, found mainly in meat, eggs, and dairy and such. This brings me on to dietary vegans, people who abstain from meat for health reasons. Again, each to their own. If you've experimented with your diet and found you feel better without meat, then go for it. It's a no-brainer. Specifically, it's a brain shrinker. Turns out if you don't get enough B12, your brain literally shrinks and atrophies, which can lead to Alzheimer's and various other indescribably insidious conditions. It turns out if you eat meat for millions of years, you develop the kind of brain that needs meat to survive. Who knew? Cats are an extreme example. They will die within weeks if they don't get meat. We're partway there. We'll die within decades. I mean, vegetarians are alright as long as they get eggs and dairy and such, but vegans are in real trouble. If you're scanning the ingredients of everything you eat, this is making sure there's not so much as a trace of an animal product in there, then you're systematically slipping all the B12 out of your diet. And eventually your brain's going to shrivel up and you're going to forget your entire adult life, including the bit where you decided to become a vegan. So you can see how it's not a sustainable model. You need to supplement your diet with B12. And good luck finding vegan-friendly B12. I think you'll find some in a laboratory, perhaps. Oh, but I only eat organic food. Oh, then you're fucked. Completely fucked. Vegan-friendly food and organic food turn out to be mutually exclusive in a healthy diet. Sorry. Wise up. Or have fun with your cognitive dissonance. There's going to be a lot of it in your future. In fact, never mind B12, let's talk about carbon. Animals consist of and exhale carbon, which enters the soil and the air and is then absorbed by plants, hence plants contain animal produce. Do you see the problem here? Where you are on the vegan spectrum is simply a case of how far that carbon has to have travelled before you're willing to eat it. Which brings me on to the scrambled clusterfuck that is political veganism. People who think everyone should be vegan. Right, this is how it works on planet Vega. On the vegan constructor fleet. Right, basically, animals are allowed to devour plants and other animals. Plants are allowed to devour animals and other plants. And they're both allowed to devour fungus and sponges and slime molds and bacteria, and they're all allowed to devour each other, and they're all allowed to devour humans. But in fact, the only combination that isn't allowed is humans devouring animals, which of course all hinges on the notion that humans aren't animals. And not to get too ad hominem, that's vegan ideology in a nutshell. Are you allowed nuts? Granted, there are clearly too many humans, and since we understand environmental responsibility, we should act environmentally responsible. But when it goes from environmental to political is where it all collapses, because you're talking about a person's right to eat meat, and personal responsibilities depend on personal rights. We're pretty much talking about law here, and the only thing that depends on law is public safety. Well, humans don't cannibalize each other because then our society would cease to function because everyone would be terrified of being cannibalized because we have that telescopic fear of the future that other animals don't have. Other animals are just afraid of the present moment. They only have rudimentary societies which actually aren't particularly disrupted by the killing and eating of individuals by predators. In fact, it's built into the system. Casualties are expected, sometimes even necessary, in order to keep the numbers down. Killing things needlessly and torturing things is clearly pretty sick, but to call it an unnatural and strictly human trait is to neglect to notice what killer whales do with seals. It's fucking brutal. odd to notice what dominant males do to each other in many species you can name off the top of your head. If you want to bring an end to all animal violence, best of luck with that. Let me know how you get on. And you kill plants, by the way. I know this sounds like a cliche argument, but if it's a case of the big guy picking on the little guy, plants don't want to be eaten either. In fact, they produce fruit, as if to say, look, if you're going to eat me, if you have to eat me, please eat these bits of me. But you go right on ahead and eat the whole fucking thing, stem and all, you monster. You eat seeds. Seeds! You sprinkle a handful of unfertilized embryos on a bed of severed limbs and congratulate yourself on not being a barbarian. Flowers are genitals. You know that, right? Vegetable genitals. Look, darling, I brought you a bunch of vaginas that I tore from the roots of unsuspecting flora. Oh, that's so sweet. And don't get me started on cauliflower cheese. Vegans won't eat cauliflower cheese because the cheese has been expressed from the nipple of a mammal for the express purpose of mammalian consumption. Meanwhile, they have no problem chowing down on a cauliflower, which, for all its charms, is an artificially swollen clitoris. It's like a bulldog's head, so deformed by man that it can no longer reproduce without us. If you take issue with the enslavement and deformity of animals, then you're invited to cast an eye over your local florist and your local greengrocers and ask yourself how those organisms became so conveniently and apparently suitable for humans. You're right, it does sound like bollocks. You're getting sort of into Ray Comfort territory. Of course we're supposed to eat it. It just seems like we're supposed to eat it. I'm just trying to get my head around it, right? Animals are similar to us, so they should be treated the same as us. And when I say animals, and when you say animals, you mean everything from chimpanzees to fucking nematode worms treated the same. Because they're animals, and we're animals, and we have a common ancestry with them 500 million years ago. But plants are completely different from us. Our common ancestry with them is like 600 million years ago. So fuck them. We can farm them and stretch them and experiment on them to our heart's content. You just can't eat anything with a brain in it. So, all right, so where's the line there? Can you eat an animal that died of natural causes and no longer has a functioning brain? And if not, why not? Can you eat... If a zombie panda eats the brain out of another panda, can you eat what's left over? And if not, why not? Can you eat a fly? No? What? Oh, the animal. Well, their brains are rubbish. They've never displayed signs of suffering as we know it, but still an animal. Okay. Here's a good one. Can you eat a Venus flytrap? Can you eat a Venus flytrap with a fly in it? Can you eat a Venus flytrap that's just finished digesting a fly? Can you eat a Venus flytrap that's eaten one fly in its lifetime? Regardless of how you answer these questions, you should by now have noticed that these are not moral distinctions. They're chemical distinctions. You will not find the black and white brushes you are looking for in this area. This area is very grey indeed. Often people find it boils down to the question, if you're willing to eat the animal, would you be willing to kill it? And my answer would be yes. I would probably kill an animal if I needed to. I just don't know what it's like to need to. And I fail to see how your answer can be any different, given what humans are clearly capable of doing to survive and have been demonstrably doing for millions of years. If you put this into practice somehow and said you can only eat bacon if you come in once a year and kill a pig, right? I'd be like, well, how do I kill it? Can I simply zap it in the brain so it dies before it's felt anything? Yes. Well, yes. If I can do that, then yes, I would kill an animal, particularly if that animal has already led a life that is longer and safer than the life it would have lived in the wild. Of course I would eat it and kill it if that was the only way to prevent me from dying slowly while my brain turned to shrunken mush. Right? Of course, if you want me to string it up by its feet and slit its throat while chanting God's name, then I'm out. I'm never eating bacon again. But if that's the only way we're doing things, then presumably bacon is off the menu, and society is already well and truly doomed. As I say, each to their own. If you don't mind your brain shrinking and shriveling, go right ahead and commit to the cause. But you should make sure you have at least one friend or relative with you who did eat meat, so that when you inevitably go senile, they can stop you from crawling under the floorboards and spooning yourself to death. But if you want a brain that, say, functions and still has memories left in it, then you are going to have to draw the line somewhere in the big grey area we call fauna. Personally, I draw the line at, for instance, dolphin steak or ground up tiger penis, but I have no problem with eating a species that is successful and adaptable. Like if you live in Australia, not only is it okay to eat rabbit, it's positively beneficial for the environment. And if your problem is with slaughterhouse practices, then I agree. We should never be crueler to an animal than, for instance, a lion would be. If you can give a herbivore a death less painful and distressing than a savage mauling from a carnivore, then win-win. We've improved on nature. Surely. If your problem is with farming practices, again I agree, but that's a problem of scale. It would be lovely if everything was organic and free range, but it's just not possible when you're trying to feed 7 billion people. If you want better, more spacious living conditions for any species, including us, there's your solution. Make less people. Sorry to keep flogging a dead horse here, people, but it's very simple. The reproductive instinct has caused an overflow, which you will not fix by suppressing the survival instinct. Suppress the reproductive instinct. Have less children. By the way, I don't mean have no children. A distinction I apparently failed to make clear in my overpopulation rant. Similarly, if your opinion is we should eat less meat, I agree. But if your solution is none of us should ever eat meat, then you are a confused hippie ignoramus. And I feel bad for you because you probably have a prune for a brain by now, so I'll be sensitive to your illness. Unless, of course, you start making condescending lectures to my fellow omnivores, in which case, fuck you, and consider this condescending lecture my preemptive rebuttal to it. To summarise, goodbye, and fuck off.